Sometimes the most intimate parts of a woman's life hide in plain sight, tucked away among everyday objects no one ever looks at twice. For me, that secret lived inside the second drawer of my mahogany dresser, nestled beneath a neat layer of silk and lace. It was a small velvet box, discreet, almost plain from the outside, but inside, it cradled not just expensive lingerie but a slender, humming toy I'd bought for myself one quietly restless afternoon when the loneliness felt too sharp to ignore. In the chaos of running a home, keeping up with my work, and keeping my marriage gently afloat, that drawer was a silent reminder that my body and my desires still belonged to me. It was my own little rebellion against the relentless sameness of the days. Lately, the house had been too quiet. My husband spent more and more time on the road, calling from sterile hotel rooms just long enough to ask about bills or the lawn or what to bring home from the airport. Our children were grown, one living out west, the other about to graduate. There were long afternoons now, hours that used to be filled with noise and needs and never enough time. The silence was both a relief and a strange ache. I poured myself into work, into errands, into running the house as if sheer order could keep the ache at bay. The agency had sent a new housekeeper after my last one retired, a woman named Kira. She was prompt, efficient, and brought with her the crisp scent of lemons and starch. She moved through my space with the careful competence of someone who understood both the importance of boundaries and the value of small details. She was polite, almost formal, but there was a confidence in her manner that made me pay attention, even if I tried not to. That Tuesday, I came home earlier than usual, expecting the house to be empty except for the subtle marks of Kira's passing, a polished counter, folded towels, the faint hint of her perfume in the hallway. Instead, I found her still at work upstairs, the bedroom windows flung open to let in a light summer breeze. The sun slipped across the carpet in long rectangles, dust motes spinning in the air. For a moment, I watched her without a word, noticing the ease of her movements, the way she wiped a speck from the mirror with one firm swipe. She was at my vanity when I walked in, but what caught my eye was the open dresser drawer beside her. The drawer. My drawer. I froze in the doorway, my heart thudding in a strange, secret panic. I could see the velvet box sitting exposed among folds of pale fabric. Kira glanced up, her expression unreadable, her posture betraying nothing. In that moment, something shifted. It was as if the air itself thickened between us, an invisible current, dangerous and electric. I knew she had seen inside, seen the shape of my private self, the part I never shared with anyone. I felt embarrassment twist in my chest, hot and prickling, but layered beneath it was something else, something sharp and thrilling. It struck me that she hadn't slammed the drawer shut or pretended not to notice. Instead, she closed it smoothly, almost reverently, her gaze steady on me for a beat too long. I found myself blushing, an involuntary, heated rush that made me feel both exposed and somehow alive in a way I hadn't in years. Suddenly, the act of hiding my desires felt more intimate than the desires themselves. The rest of the afternoon was a blur. Every time I walked past her in the hall, every glance, every quiet moment became charged with an awareness I couldn't name. My mind replayed the image of her fingers brushing velvet, her eyes catching the secret I'd buried away. It was as if she'd found not just my toy but the boundary between my routine and my yearning, and in crossing it, she had awakened something restless inside me. That evening, I showered longer than usual, letting the water wash over my skin as I replayed the moment in my mind. I wondered if I should feel shame, but the feeling that lingered was more complicated: anticipation, a slow-building heat that left my skin tingling long after I'd dried off. In bed, I lay awake, one hand tracing absent patterns over my stomach, thinking not just of what Kira had seen, but of the way she had seen me. I realized I wanted to know what it would feel like if someone else, not just me, let that secret live out in the open. I drifted to sleep feeling both vulnerable and strangely emboldened, a quiet thrill pulsing just beneath the surface, knowing that one small discovery had changed something fundamental in the air of my home. The next morning, I awoke with a nervous energy humming under my skin, the memories of yesterday looping through my mind like a secret melody only I could hear. The house felt different, charged, alive, the air full of possibility and something sharper, almost dangerous. I lingered over my morning coffee, glancing at the clock more often than usual, listening for the soft sounds of movement that would signal Kira's arrival. When I finally heard her footsteps in the hallway, I felt my pulse quicken as if I'd been caught in a lie and was both frightened and exhilarated by the thought. She moved quietly through the house, going about her routine as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred, but I was hyper-aware of her presence in a way I never had been with anyone before. Every time she passed by, a ripple of awareness moved through me, as though my skin could sense her gaze even when she wasn't looking directly at me. The simple acts of cleaning, dusting, straightening pillows became loaded with unspoken tension, like a silent language neither of us wanted to translate. I caught myself watching her hands, the way her fingers curled around the handle of the vacuum, the careful way she arranged the magazines on the coffee table, the subtle flex of her forearm when she wiped down the banister. I found myself inventing excuses to be in the same room, to share a space, to cross paths even if just for a second. There was an intimacy in these moments that was somehow more profound than anything physical, something about the awareness of being seen and seeing back, about how a glance could feel like a caress. When our eyes met, even for the briefest instant, it was as if she could see right through me, past the polished exterior I presented to the world, straight to the restless, hungry places I kept hidden. The way she looked at me was not judgmental or embarrassed, but knowing, almost appreciative, as if she recognized something in me she'd glimpsed before in herself. I felt exposed, yet safe, as if there was a private agreement being written in the spaces between our words and gestures. Throughout the day, I replayed that moment by the dresser again and again, wondering what she had thought, what she had felt, if the flush in my cheeks had been as obvious as the rush of heat in my body. I tried to focus on my work, on emails and phone calls and lists, but every distraction looped back to her. My thoughts circled endlessly. Did she find it amusing? Was she surprised? Or did she understand, maybe even share, the secret thrill of being caught in a private world by someone unexpectedly attentive? I could almost feel her gaze following me, tracing the outline of my figure beneath my dress, lingering where the fabric stretched smooth and warm against my skin. As the afternoon sun drifted across the floorboards, shadows stretched long and thin, and the silence between us grew thick and golden. I found myself searching for her reflection in windows, catching glimpses of her passing behind me in mirrors. I wondered what it would be like to turn around and see her there, close enough to touch, her eyes holding mine with that same deep, unspoken invitation. My own body betrayed me with every quickened breath, every tightening of my chest, every subtle ache low in my belly. It was as if my senses had been turned up to full volume and everything ordinary, the brush of air, the shift of light, the faint scent of lemons, became sharp and thrilling, a language I had never learned but somehow suddenly understood. When Kira finally finished for the day, I heard the faint click of the front door and found myself standing in the hallway, listening to the silence she left behind. The rooms felt emptier, echoing with the memory of her eyes on me, of her hands moving through my space. I pressed my palm to the banister she had just cleaned, feeling the lingering warmth of her touch, and wondered how something so small could leave me so undone. That night, I moved through the house restlessly, haunted by the way she had looked at me, as if she knew the person I was behind closed doors, as if she wanted to see more. I went to bed craving that gaze, that silent conversation, wishing it could last just a little longer, and knowing that tomorrow, the world would feel different once again. On the morning of Kira's next visit, the anticipation thrummed inside me like a second heartbeat. I moved through my usual routine, emails, phone calls, the faint rattle of breakfast dishes, but everything felt brittle and transparent, as if the ordinary world was only a thin layer stretched over something much more raw and alive beneath. The house seemed to sense it too. Every sound was sharper, every shaft of light through the blinds felt more intimate, more secret. I caught myself checking my reflection too many times, smoothing my hair, choosing my clothes with unusual care. I wondered what she would notice, what she would remember from before, whether she too felt the pulse of something unspoken building between us. When the doorbell finally rang, I felt a flutter in my chest, a rush of warmth that settled deep inside me. Kira entered with her usual calm, but her eyes lingered on mine just a moment too long, and in that small pause I felt the room contract, drawing us closer together. The hours moved in a blur of routine and something more. She dusted, swept, arranged, but I felt her presence behind me, beside me, even when we were separated by walls and silence. Each time our paths crossed, a brush of shoulders on the stairs, the faintest contact of hands passing a dish, a current leaped between us, invisible but undeniable. I could see the question in her gaze, mirrored in my own, daring me to cross the boundary I had drawn for so many years. When I finally climbed the stairs to my bedroom, my heart was racing. The room was filled with the afternoon light, gold and heavy, and Kira was there already, her back to me as she organized my vanity. I stopped in the doorway, transfixed by the easy confidence of her movements. She opened the second drawer, and I stood motionless, watching as her fingers hovered over the velvet box. This time, I did not want to hide, did not want to look away. I wanted to see her see me. Her hand brushed the box, slow and deliberate, her shoulders straightening just enough for me to sense her awareness. She turned slightly, and our eyes locked. In that moment, the line between us blurred until it was nothing more than a suggestion, a relic of an older version of myself that no longer fit. The air in the room was charged, humid with possibility and longing. My skin felt too tight, my breath too loud. I stood rooted to the spot, watching as she gently closed the drawer, as if to say she was returning my secret without erasing its meaning. Her presence filled the room, not with words but with silent permission, an invitation that lived entirely in the space between her hands and my body. My pulse pounded in my throat as she moved closer, the subtle grace of her stride unmistakable. My whole body yearned for her to bridge that last, fragile distance. She stopped within arm's reach, her eyes holding mine, searching for a decision, for a yes that neither of us dared to voice. My own hands trembled slightly, anticipation and fear battling beneath my skin. I imagined what it would feel like to surrender, to let go of the careful distance I had maintained for so long, to trust her with the part of me that had been dormant and aching for attention. My body betrayed me, every nerve ending alight, longing for her touch, for any small confirmation that she wanted this too. The rest of the house faded away, reduced to nothing but a backdrop for this private threshold we now stood on. I could feel her breath, warm and even, mingling with my own. The faint vibration of longing was louder than any words. I had never been so aware of another person, never felt so exquisitely exposed, so ready to risk the safety of routine for a chance at something wild and unknown. Time stretched, holding us in its hands, and I realized I had already crossed the line, even if my body hadn't moved. My mind whispered permission, my heart beat out a rhythm of want. All that was left was the fall, the quiet surrender, the dizzying relief of no longer being alone with my desire. The air in the bedroom felt impossibly heavy, charged with everything unsaid and every longing I had kept carefully hidden until now. My body felt both foreign and familiar, a strange vessel of anticipation, every sense alert and straining. I sat on the edge of the bed, my palms pressed flat against the soft, rumpled comforter, feeling the texture beneath my fingertips as though it might anchor me. Kira's presence was a weight, a warmth behind me, the sound of her breath steady and low, the heat of her gaze moving over my skin even before her hands did. I could hear the faint shift of her feet on the carpet, the rustle of clothing, and the distinct click of the velvet box as she opened the drawer again, deliberate and unhurried, as if giving me time to decide whether to stop her. I didn't want her to stop. A low hum filled the air, the telltale vibration of the toy in her hand, subtle but insistent, a secret frequency just for us. She moved closer, her body a shadow beside mine, and her touch landed lightly on my knee, a gentle test that sent a shiver spiraling up my thigh. My breath caught. Every inch of my skin seemed to tingle with expectation. She guided me slowly to lie back, and I let myself sink into the bed, surrendering the last of my hesitation. I stared at the ceiling, counting the ridges in the plaster, the rhythm of my heart loud and erratic as her hands explored the line of my hips, the sensitive dip of my stomach, tracing patterns over the silk of my robe. There was a tenderness to her touch that made me ache, not rushed, not greedy, but reverent, as if every movement was an answer to a question I hadn't dared ask. The toy traced along the inside of my thigh, the vibration subtle at first, teasing, circling. My legs parted with a will of their own, breath coming faster now, warmth spreading outward from the point where her touch lingered. I squeezed my eyes shut, letting sensation crowd out thought. Every nerve seemed to light up, a constellation of need mapped across my body. Kira's other hand rested on my hip, grounding me, coaxing me open, steady as the pressure of the toy increased, finding the places that made my back arch and my mouth part in silent confession. The world narrowed to the heat of her hand, the deep, insistent thrum, the intoxicating sense of being wanted exactly as I was. It wasn't frantic or hurried. It was slow, attentive, a kind of worship in every caress, every adjustment of her hand. I felt her lips brush my knee, felt the warmth of her breath slide higher, and when her mouth found my skin, soft, insistent, searching, I couldn't hold still. I was adrift on a tide of sensation, muscles trembling, fingers tangled in the sheet as she coaxed pleasure from me with patient skill. Each time I thought I would shatter, she brought me back, slowing the rhythm, letting me linger on the edge, teaching me the shape of my own need. I surrendered, let go of all pretense, let the pleasure build in waves, cresting higher each time, until there was no room for anything but the heat, the pulse, the sound of my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. Release came as a flood, a rush that left me boneless, open, breathless. For a long moment, I could do nothing but float in the aftermath, eyes unfocused, body limp and singing with aftershocks. Kira's hands continued their slow, gentle movements, her touch soothing, reassuring, as if she were gathering the scattered pieces of me and putting them back together. I felt her settle beside me, the heat of her skin radiating comfort and safety. In the quiet that followed, there was no shame, only the glow of being seen and cherished, the certainty that what had passed between us was real and deeply wanted. For the first time in years, I felt utterly present in my own body, full of gratitude and quiet awe at what I had discovered, not only in her hands but within myself. Afterward, I lingered on the bed, my body still humming with the echoes of pleasure, my skin flushed and oversensitized as if every inch of me had been rewritten. I stared at the ceiling in a soft haze, breathing slow and uneven, feeling the sheets cool beneath my back where moments ago there had been only heat and pressure and the sure touch of her hands. Kira sat at the edge, her presence calm and grounding, a quiet assurance that what had just happened was real, that it was not a dream woven from loneliness or longing but a choice made and lived in the full, bright light of afternoon. She rose quietly, and I watched as she moved with a gentle precision, returning the toy to its velvet box, closing the drawer, smoothing the covers where our bodies had left impressions. There was nothing hurried or furtive in her actions, only care and a silent promise that this new closeness was neither an accident nor a single spark soon to be forgotten. When she left the room, I remained alone in the growing hush, the air thick with the scent of skin and faint traces of perfume, my body still pulsing with the memory of her touch. My thoughts tumbled restlessly, struggling to settle somewhere between elation and uncertainty. I traced lazy circles on my stomach, half expecting guilt or doubt to fill the space inside me, but they did not come. Instead, there was a deep, luxurious anticipation, a delicious sense of something unfinished, like a story paused in the middle of its most beautiful line. I replayed the smallest details again and again, the slide of silk, the hush of breath, the way her eyes held mine as if we were confessing something that had long waited for daylight. The rest of the afternoon blurred into a gentle suspension. I drifted through my house in a private daze, picking up objects and setting them down, each touch recalling the imprint of her hands on my body. Every surface she had cleaned now felt different, charged with a memory only I could see. The sunlight moved across the floors and up the walls, slow and golden, marking time in a way that seemed almost mocking, each minute a quiet question: when, and how, would this new thread between us be picked up again? I wondered how I would face her next time, whether my eyes would give me away, whether the hunger that had awakened would be visible in the way I moved or spoke or even stood too close. I thought of my husband, of the rhythms of my marriage, the daily rituals and practiced smiles, the years of knowing someone so well that you can hide entire continents of yourself in plain sight. What happened with Kira was not just a break in that pattern, but a revelation, one that left me longing not just for her touch but for the next chance to step outside the lines of my own carefully constructed life. Evening settled in, soft and blue, and I let myself imagine the future not as a return to what was, but as a series of new beginnings. I felt my body respond to the memory of her, nerves sparking with the hope of another day, another moment, another chance for the story to continue. The not knowing was its own kind of intoxication, a sweet ache that lingered in the quiet house, promising that whatever came next would be worth waiting for. That night, the house felt utterly transformed, as if every shadow and beam of moonlight remembered what had happened, holding the secret close beneath its quiet surface. I moved through the rooms in a haze, my senses heightened, every detail of the ordinary world newly charged and precarious. My skin tingled with the memory of Kira's hands, her warmth lingering long after she'd gone, echoing in my fingertips and the hollow of my throat. The air was thick with questions, restless and humming, as I tried to piece together what this all meant for me, for my marriage, for the fragile world I had so carefully built and maintained. There was no longer any hiding from the truth that had broken free inside me. Sleep came only in fragments, chased away by the vivid replay of her touch and the sound of my own breath catching in the dark. I felt suspended between the comfort of the familiar and the thrilling unknown, pulled in two directions at once. Part of me wanted to retreat, to put everything back where it belonged, to let this be a singular, unrepeatable mistake I could fold away and forget. But another part, stronger now, louder than it had ever been, ached for more, for the risk and revelation, for the hunger that Kira had so effortlessly drawn to the surface. Every minute alone with my thoughts, I replayed the arc of her mouth against my skin, the deep hum of the toy, the gentle command of her hands as they taught me to surrender. The next morning dawned quietly, sunlight streaming in thin slats across the bed, warming the place beside me that should have felt lonely but instead throbbed with anticipation. I rose, my body heavy and sensitive, craving more of what had awakened in me. The day moved slowly, each hour stretched taut with expectation. I checked my phone, the calendar, the door, as if some sign would tell me when she might return, or whether I should be the one to break the silence. Every sound from the street outside made my heart race, a flutter of nerves and hope and something close to fear. I wondered if she was thinking of me too, if she replayed the moments as I did, if the memory of my body haunted her hands as hers did mine. I dressed with new intention, choosing clothes that made me feel beautiful and powerful, as if wrapping myself in the possibility of being desired. My reflection in the mirror looked different, softer, more open, carrying a secret I no longer wished to bury. The anticipation became a companion, lingering at the edges of every mundane task. I found myself walking through the house, touching the banister, the kitchen counter, the cool glass of the window, letting my fingers remember where she had been. Everything was colored by the waiting, the not knowing, the question of what would happen when we finally saw each other again. As evening fell, the ache of desire folded itself into something quieter but no less urgent, a slow-burning certainty that my story was not finished. I stood by the window, watching the world darken, feeling the line between old routines and new possibilities blur until I could no longer see where one ended and the other began. I let myself imagine Kira's return, the soft sound of her voice, the sure weight of her touch, the dizzying relief of being chosen again. The future hovered just beyond reach, shimmering with risk, but I was no longer content to stand safely behind my boundaries. In that fragile, electric space between longing and fulfillment, I learned to savor the uncertainty, to find beauty in the unfinished edges of desire. My life had shifted, quietly but irrevocably, and I knew there was no turning back. The story was unfinished, and I stood poised at the threshold, ready to step forward, not knowing what waited in the next room, only that I would not go back to who I had been before.